Gun laws and policies, collectively referred to as firearms regulation or gun control, regulate the manufacture, sale, transfer, possession, modification and use of small arms by civilians. Many countries have restrictive firearm policies, while a few have permissive ones. The only countries with permissive gun legislation are Albania, Austria, Chad, Republic of Congo, Honduras, Micronesia, Namibia, Nigeria, Pakistan, Senegal, Tanzania, the United States, Yemen, and Zambia. Countries with a strong gun culture may afford civilians a right to keep and bear arms, and have more liberal gun laws than neighboring jurisdictions. Countries which regulate access to firearms will typically restrict access to certain categories of firearms and then restrict the categories of persons who may be granted a license for access to such firearms. There may be separate licenses for hunting, sport shooting, aka target shooting, self-defense, collecting, and concealed carry, with different sets of requirements, permissions, and responsibilities. Gun laws are often enacted with the intention of reducing the use of small arms in criminal activity, specifying weapons perceived as being capable of inflicting the greatest damage and those most easily concealed, such as handguns and other short-barreled weapons. Persons restricted from legal access to firearms may include those below a certain age or having a criminal record. Firearm licenses may be denied to those felt most at risk of harming themselves or others, such as persons with a history of domestic violence, alcoholism or substance abuse, mental illness, depression or attempted suicide. Those applying for a firearm license may have to demonstrate competence by completing a gun safety course and show provision for a secure location to store weapons. Guns laws are considered permissive in countries where the authorities will provide a firearm license on a shall-issue basis to ordinary citizens who meet the legal requirements. Guns laws are restrictive when licenses are provided on a may-issue basis, at the discretion of the regulating authority, often requiring the applicant to demonstrate a reason why they need a firearm. Gun laws are considered strict when it is difficult or impossible for an ordinary citizen to obtain a firearm through legal means. The legislation which restricts small arms may also restrict other weapons, such as explosives, crossbows, swords, electroshock weapons, air guns, and pepper spray. It may also restrict firearm accessories, notably high-capacity magazines and sound suppressors. There may be restrictions on the quantity or types of ammunition purchased, with certain types prohibited. Due to the global scope of this article, detailed coverage cannot be provided on all these matters. The article will instead attempt to briefly summarize each country's weapon laws in regard to small arms use and ownership by civilians. Africa. The Bamako Declaration on an African Common Position on the Illicit Proliferation, Circulation, and Trafficking of Small Arms and Light Weapons was adopted in Bamako, Mali, on December 1, 2000 by the representatives of the 51 member states of the Organization of African Unity, OAU. The provisions of this declaration recommend that the signatories would establish the illegal possession of small arms and light weapons as a criminal offense under national law in their respective countries. Kenya. Gun law in Kenya is specified in the Firearms Act, Cap 114, Laws of Kenya. The Chief Licensing Officer, CLO, has discretion to award, deny, or revoke firearms licenses. Applicants must be 21 years of age or older, pass a stringent background check for criminal activity, mental health, and domestic violence, and state genuine reason, for their need to privately own and carry a firearm. Checks are regularly repeated, with failure to pass resulting in immediate revocation of the license. Once licensed to own a gun, no additional permit is required to carry a concealed firearm. South Africa. In South Africa, Firearms Control Act 60, enacted in 2000, regulates the ownership of firearms by civilians. Ownership of a firearm is conditional on a competency test and several other factors, including a background check of the applicant, inspection of an applicant's premises, and, since July 2004, licensing of the weapon by the police. There are several different firearms licenses, allowing different types of weapons for different purposes. Handguns and carrying in public is legal under all license types with no additional permit. The only prohibited small arms are burst fire and fully automatic firearms, and firearms which have been modified in bore or barrel length without permission. Americas. Argentina. Firearms in Argentina are restricted, and regulated by ANMAC, Agencia Nacional de Materiales Controlados, since late October 2015 when said agency replaced RENAR, Registro Nacional de Armas de la República Argentina, both being a branch of the Ministry of Justice and Human Rights. To own a firearm in Argentina, one must be a legitimate user. Applicants must be 21 years of age or older, provide a medical certificate that certifies they are physically and mentally fit, complete a safety course, provide a legitimate mean of income, undergo and pass a background check. A successful applicant is fingerprinted and issued a license which has to be renewed every 5 years. One may not legally fire a firearm in Argentina if they are not a legitimate user, even if that gun belongs to someone else. Once a legitimate user wants to purchase a firearm, they must provide a secure location to store the firearm, and give an acceptable reason for wanting a firearm such as collecting, target shooting, hunting, business, or self-defense in the home. Firearms must be purchased through a licensed dealer and registered with ANMAC. If a firearm is inherited, a re-registering form must be filed. There is no limit on the number of firearms owned so long as they are properly stored. Ammunition sales are recorded but unlimited. Carry permits for licensed handgun owners are extremely difficult to obtain, and require appearing before the ANMAC board to make their case. Carry permits are renewed yearly to re-examine their clear and present danger, and the permit is usually revoked immediately if this danger is removed. Those dealing in money or valuables or in private security may be issued a business carry permit. Handguns above .32 caliber are conditional use. Fully automatic handguns are prohibited to civilians. Bolt-action rifles above .22 long rifle and semi-automatic rifles above .22 long rifle with a non-detachable magazine are conditional use. Fully automatic rifles and semi-automatic rifles above .22 long rifle with detachable magazines are prohibited. Semi-automatic shotguns and shotguns with barrels between 380 and 600 mm, 15 and 24 in, long are conditional use. Fully automatic shotguns and shotguns with barrels under 380 mm, 15 in, are prohibited. Brazil. All firearms in Brazil are required to be registered. The minimum age for ownership is 25, and certificates of aptitude and mental health are required prior to the acquisition of a firearm and every 3 years thereafter. It is generally illegal to carry a firearm outside a residence. Executive Order No. 5.123 of July 1, 2004 allows the federal police to confiscate firearms which are not possessed for a valid reason. Self-defense is not considered a valid argument. The total number of firearms in Brazil is thought to be between 14 million and 17 million, with an estimated 9 million being unregistered. In a 2005 referendum, Brazilians voted against a government proposal for a total ban on the sales of firearms to private citizens. Canada. Canada's firearm laws are stated in the Firearms Act. The Possession and Acquisition License, PAL, is distributed by the RCMP, Federal Police, and requires taking a firearms safety course and passing a test, a background check, and reference interviews. The PAL allows purchase of most popular sporting rifles and shotguns. A restricted PAL, RPAL, has an additional course for restricted weapons, which have increased storage requirements. The two main reasons for owning firearms are target shooting and hunting. Carrying firearms for self-defense against human threats is prohibited, but a wilderness carry permit can be obtained for protection against wild animals. There is an authorization to transport, ATT, requirement for restricted and prohibited weapons, which must be registered. Non-citizens may obtain a non-resident firearms declaration from a customs officer, for a temporary 60-day authorization to bring a non-prohibited firearm into Canada. In Canada, firearms fall into one of 3 categories. Non-restricted, long guns with an overall length greater than 26 inches, 660 mm, and semi-automatics with a barrel longer than 18.5 inches, 470 mm. These can be possessed with an ordinary PAL, and are the only class of firearms which can be used for hunting. Restricted, this includes handguns with barrel lengths greater than 4.1 inches, 105 mm, and long guns which do not meet the length requirements for non-restricted but are not prohibited. These guns require ATs, so can only be discharged at ranges. Prohibited, these weapons generally cannot be possessed by civilians, and include fully automatic weapons and many military arms, and handguns with barrel length equal to or shorter than 4.1 inches, 105 mm, and those chambered for .25 and .32 cartridges. Normally, the only way to possess these is by being grandfathered in or through inheritance. Most magazines for semi-automatic long guns capable of holding more than 5 centerfire cartridges or 10 rounds for handguns are prohibited. Chile. In Chile, the 92nd article of the Constitution declares gun ownership as a privilege granted in accordance to a special law. Firearms are regulated by the police. Civilian gun ownership is allowed by law but discouraged by authorities, with regular press statements and campaigns denouncing the dangers of private firearms. Police-issued firearm permits require applicants to be 18 years of age, provide a mental health certificate issued by a psychiatrist, have a clean criminal record with no domestic violence accusations, and pass a written test on firearm safety and knowledge. Final approval is in the hands of the police commander of the district, who can deny the permit in justified cases not detailed in the letter of the law. There are 5 types of permits. A defense permit allows ownership of 2 firearms which must remain at the declared address. A hunting permit requires a hunting license, and allows for up to 6 firearms. A sporting permit requires membership in a registered gun club, and allows up to 6 firearms. It is possible for those under 18 years of age to obtain this permit. A collection permit allows an unlimited number of firearms to be owned, but does not allow the holder to possess ammunition. Collectors must have special security measures which are reviewed by police. Each of these has limits on type of firearm, and allows for a police-issued permit to buy a specified quantity of appropriate ammunition from a specific gun shop. Transport permits are required to take firearms from the permit holder's residence to a specified shooting range or hunting ground, and are valid for 2 years. Transported firearms must be unloaded and not attached to the body. A self-defense permit allows carrying a firearm for protection against specific human threats. Such permits are valid for 1 year, but as the police commander can deny applications without stating a reason, they are very rarely issued. Automatic firearms are forbidden for civilian use. Honduras. Gun laws in Honduras are stated in the Act on the Control of Firearms, Ammunition, Explosives, and Other Related Material of 2000. In April 2002, the National Arms Registry was formed, requiring all citizens to register their firearms with the Ministry of Defense. In 2003, a ban on certain assault rifles was passed, restricting citizens from possessing military-style rifles such as the AK-47 and the M16. In 2007, an additional decree suspended the right to openly carry a firearm in public, and limited the number of firearms possessed per person. Jamaica. Gun laws in Jamaica are stated in the Firearms Act and regulated by the Firearms Licensing Authority. Applicants must pass a police background check and complete a certification process to obtain a firearms license for shotguns, handguns, and rifles. Shotguns and rifles for hunting or sport shooting purposes are easier to obtain than handguns. Fully automatic weapons are prohibited. Handguns are limited to those under .45 caliber for revolvers or 10 mm for pistols. Ammunition purchases are limited to 250 rounds per year for shotguns and 50 for handguns, with applications for additional ammunition generally granted during the hunting season. A gun safe is required for storage of all firearms and ammunition. Once licensed, no additional permit is required to carry a firearm open or concealed, unless the carrying of firearms has been temporarily prohibited under Section 22 of the Act. Mexico. Under the Mexican Constitution, citizens and legal residents have the right to own arms, but may only carry them in accordance with police regulation. Applicants must have a clear criminal record and proven income and residence, i.e., cannot be homeless. New firearms are purchased through the Ministry of Defense. Prohibited weapons include large caliber handguns, shotguns with barrels shorter than 25 inches, 640 mm, or bore greater than 12 gauge, and rifles which are fully automatic or of large caliber. One handgun is permitted for home defense. For hunting and sport shooting, up to 9 long guns and 1 handgun is permitted, requiring membership in a hunting or shooting club. Collectors may be authorized to possess additional and prohibited weapons. A carry license may be issued to those employed by private security firms, or those who may be targets of crime. Panama. Obtaining firearms in Panama requires a firearms possession certificate, which requires a lengthy background check and training. The minimum age to own a firearm is 18 years. A separate permit that allows carrying of a concealed firearm, with all the same requirements, is available to those aged 21 and over. Certain kinds of firearms and ammunition, such as automatic firearms, long guns whose barrels have been shortened, or armor-piercing rounds, are prohibited even for licensed gun owners. United States. In the United States, gun laws are found in a number of federal statutes, enforced by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF. The right to keep and bear arms is protected by the Second Amendment to the Constitution, and most state constitutions also guarantee this right. There is some variance across the country as both federal and state laws apply to firearm possession and ownership. Persons are generally prohibited from purchasing a firearm if they have been convicted of a felony, or any other crime for which they could have been sentenced to more than a year in prison, or are under indictment for such. They are a fugitive from justice. They have been convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence. They are an unlawful user of, or addicted to, controlled substances, including marijuana. They have been adjudicated mentally defective. They have been discharged from the armed forces under dishonorable conditions. They have renounced their United States citizenship. The carrying of weapons, either openly or concealed, is regulated by the states, and these laws have changed rapidly over the past decade. As of 2016, most states grant licenses to carry handguns on a shall-issue basis to qualified applicants. A few states leave the issuance of carry permits to the discretion of issuing authorities, called may issue, while 11 states allow the carrying of firearms in a concealed manner without a permit, called constitutional carry. 26 states allow for open carrying of handguns without a permit while, in general, 20 states require a permit to do so and 4 states plus Washington, D.C. ban open carry of handguns. There have been legal challenges to concealed carry laws, with different rulings to their constitutional validity. Asia. People's Republic of China, PRC. Gun ownership in the People's Republic of China, PRC, is strictly regulated by law. Generally, private citizens are not allowed to possess guns. Civilian ownership of guns is largely restricted to authorized, non-individual entities, including sporting organizations, authorized hunting reserves, and wildlife protection, management, and research organizations. The chief exception to the general ban on individual firearm ownership is for the purpose of hunting. Illegal possession or sale of firearms may result in a minimum punishment of 3 years in prison, and penalties for arms trafficking include life imprisonment. Hong Kong and Macau. In Hong Kong and Macau, gun ownership is tightly controlled and possession is mainly in the hands of law enforcement, military, and private security firms, providing protection for jewelers and banks. Under Section 13 of Cap. 238 Firearms and Ammunition Ordinance of the Hong Kong Law, a license is required for unrestricted firearms and ammunition. A license may be issued after a rigorous process to check for criminal records or a history of mental illness. License holders may store other firearms at home in a locked box, but ammunition must be kept at a different premises. Only fully automatic firearms appear prohibited. Those found in possession without a license could be fined HKD $100,000 and face imprisonment for up to 14 years. East Timor. Under East Timorese law, only the military and police forces may possess, carry, and use firearms. In late June 2008, the Prime Minister, Zanana Gusmao, introduced a proposed gun law to Parliament for urgent debate, pushing back scheduled budgetary discussions. The new law, which would allow civilians to own guns, sparked heated debates in the East Timorese Parliament. The United Nations, which has a peacekeeping force deployed in the nation, also expressed concerns over the new law. India. Guns in India are strictly regulated by law. The Arms Act, 1959 and the Arms Rules 1962 prohibit the sale, manufacture, possession, acquisition, import, export, and transport of firearms and ammunition unless under a license, which is difficult to obtain. The Indian government has a monopoly over the production and sale of firearms, with the exception of some breech-loading smoothbore shotguns, of which a limited number may be produced and imported. The Arms Act classifies firearms into two categories, prohibited bore, PB, and non-prohibited bore, NPB, where all semi-automatic and fully automatic firearms fall under the prohibited bore category. The Arms Act of 1962 added to the PB category any firearm which can chamber and fire ammunition of the caliber .303, 7.62 mm, .410, .380, .455, .45 rimless, or 9 mm smoothbore guns having barrels shorter than 20 in, 510 mm, are also specified as PB guns. Licenses for acquisition and possession of both PB and NPB firearms could be given by a state government or district magistrate before 1987. From that year, the issuing of licenses for PB firearms became the responsibility of the central government. Licenses are valid for 3 years and may be renewed. The sale of firearms requires both parties to possess the permit. The criteria considered during the issue of NPB firearm permits are whether the applicant faces a threat to their life. PB firearms criteria are more stringent, often for persons in government positions who face immediate danger or threats, those whose occupation involves open threats and danger, and family members of such people. PB licenses became more regulated in 2014, when otherwise eligible persons were frequently rejected on basis of national security grounds. Exceptions are made for defense officers who are allowed to keep firearms without licenses under the Defense Service Rule, and a handful of professional shooters. The most common household firearm is a double-barreled 12-gauge shotgun, known as DBBL 12-bore. Other common firearms are .315 bolt-action rifles, magazine capacity of 5 cartridges, and .32 revolvers, capacity of 6 cartridges. Indonesia. Indonesia has generally strict gun laws. Licenses are normally only issued to civilians employed in a profession that involves firearms such as military and law enforcement, with an exception for politicians and businessmen. Applicants must be a minimum age of 21 years to obtain a firearms license, and go through a very thorough background check and mental evaluation. They must also state a genuine reason for wanting to own a firearm, which would include hunting, target shooting, collecting, security, and self-defense. All firearms must be registered. Gun permits are valid for 5 years and may be renewed. Civilians cannot possess military weapons, but may possess long rifles. Handguns can only be used for sport shooting and hunting. In 2012, however, it is claimed that the police had been issuing permits to regular citizens. Israel. Gun laws in Israel are comprehensive despite soldiers being allowed to carry their service weapons on or off duty. Civilians must obtain a firearms license to lawfully acquire, possess, sell, or transfer firearms and ammunition. Only a small group of people are eligible for firearms licenses: certain retired military personnel, police officers, or prison guards, residents of settlements, in the West Bank and the Golan Heights, or those who often work in such towns, and licensed hunters and animal control officers. Age requirements vary, 20 or 21 for those who completed military service or civil service equivalent, 27 otherwise, and 45 for non-citizens. Firearm license applicants must have been a resident of Israel for at least 3 consecutive years, pass a background check, criminal, health, and mental history, establish a genuine reason for possessing a firearm, such as self-defense, hunting, or sport, and pass a weapons training course. Around 40% of applications for firearms permits are rejected. Those holding firearms licenses must renew them and pass a shooting course every 3 years, and undergo psychological assessment at least once every 6 years. Security guards must pass these tests to renew their license to carry firearms belonging to their employers. Applicants must demonstrate that they have a safe at their residence in which to keep the firearm. Permits are given only for personal use, and holders for self-defense purposes may own only one handgun and purchase an annual supply of 50 cartridges, although more may be purchased to replace rounds used at a firing range. In addition to private licenses of firearms, organizations can issue carry licenses to their members or employees for activity related to that organization, e.g. security companies, shooting clubs, other workplaces. Members of officially recognized shooting clubs, e.g., practical shooting, Olympic shooting, are eligible for personal licenses allowing them to possess additional firearms, small-bore rifles, handguns, air rifles, and air pistols, and ammunition after demonstrating a need and fulfilling minimum membership time and activity requirements. Unlicensed individuals who want to engage in practice shooting are allowed supervised use of handguns at firing ranges. Most individuals who are licensed to possess handguns may carry them loaded in public, concealed or openly. In 2005, there were 237,000 private citizens and 154,000 security guards licensed to carry firearms. Another 34,000 Israelis own guns illegally due to their failure to renew their firearms license. In 2007, there were estimated to be 500,000 licensed small arms held by civilians, in addition to 1,757,500 by the military, and 26,040 by the police. Japan. The weapons law of Japan begins by stating no one shall possess a firearm or firearms or a sword or swords, and very few exceptions are allowed. Citizens are permitted to possess firearms for hunting and sport shooting, but only after submitting to a lengthy licensing procedure. After 10 years of shotgun ownership, a license holder may apply to obtain a rifle. Kuwait. Kuwait has strict firearms laws. Firearms may be licensed to a citizen, or foreigner recommended by the Minister of Interior, who is at least 25 years old and fully capable of handling a weapon, with no criminal record, who is not a suspect or under police surveillance, and who has a source of income. Hunting shotguns are the most commonly licensed weapons. Rifles chambered for .22 long rifle are also common, with hunting and sniper rifles more difficult to obtain. Handguns are only allowed for VIPs. Automatic rifles and machine guns are not legally permitted for civilian possession. Lebanon. In the Lebanese Republic, ownership of any firearm other than handguns, hunting arms, and antiques is illegal, and only the latter two are permitted to leave the owner's home, making Lebanon one of the most gun-controlled nations in the Middle East. Disregard for this law, however, is prevalent. Lebanon does not officially grant the right to bear arms, but it is a firmly held cultural belief in the country. Firearms licenses are granted to certain individuals, but the test is not open to the public and requires a particular need to be demonstrated. Gun control has been largely unsuccessful in Lebanon due to a historic gun culture, a lack of effective central government control or authority over many parts of the country, and the tumultuous nature of the region. Although gunsmithing was once prominent in the region, it has all but ceased since the mid-1930s, yet it remains legal with a permit. Lebanon has come to be one of the largest arms markets in the Middle East. Lebanon ranks 58th worldwide for privately owned firearms per capita. Malaysia. Malaysia has strict gun laws. The Arms Act, 1960, requires Malaysian citizens to have a license for manufacture, import, export, repair, or ownership of firearms. A firearm license can only be granted by the chief police officer of a state. Discharging a firearm in crimes such as extortion, robbery, resisting arrest, and housebreaking is punished by the death penalty. Exhibiting a firearm for any of the scheduled offenses, without discharging, carries a penalty of life imprisonment and caning of not less than 6 strokes. Possession of unlawful firearms carries a sentence of up to 14 years in prison and caning. While the general public cannot obtain a gun through legal means, a black market for guns does exist. North Korea. North Korea strictly prohibits the use, ownership, manufacture, or distribution of firearms by any citizen not serving in the military or special sectors of the government executing official duties. Anyone in violation of firearms laws are subject to stern consequences. Pakistan. Pakistan has permissive firearm laws compared to the rest of South Asia, and has the 6th highest number of privately owned guns in the world. Laws regulate the carrying of weapons in public in most urban areas. Private guns are prohibited in educational institutions, hostels, boarding and lodging houses, fairs, gatherings, or processions of a political, religious, ceremonial, or sectarian character, and on the premises of courts of law or public offices. The law in Pakistan does not stipulate that a gun license should be denied or revoked, and a license permits ownership of any number of weapons including handguns of any size and fully automatic weapons. Gun culture is strong among Pakistanis and a traditionally important part of rural life in its northwestern areas where it is not uncommon to see people legally carrying RPGs and assault rifles. Philippines. The Philippines has generally strict gun laws, though liberal in comparison to other Asia-Pacific countries due to its active gun culture. Philippine gun control became notorious in 1972 during the presidency of Ferdinand Marcos, who implemented a near prohibition of all civilian guns. Current gun laws in the Philippines are outlined from Republic Act 10591, signed in 2013. In order to own a firearm, a citizen must acquire a possession license. Applicants must be of a minimum age of 21 years and have no history of criminal activity or domestic violence. License holders may carry handguns in public with the acquisition of a permit to carry, PTC, which are granted on a may-issue basis. Applicants must demonstrate a need for a PTC, such as an imminent threat of danger. PTCs are typically granted to lawyers, accountants, media practitioners, cashiers, bank tellers, priests, ministers, rabbis, imams, physicians, nurses, or engineers. Most Filipinos own firearms for self-protection and target shooting, which require licenses. Despite the strict laws, gun culture is particularly strong in the Philippines, in part due to the influence of American culture. Singapore. Citizens in Singapore must obtain a license to lawfully possess firearms or ammunition. Applicants must provide justification for the license, such as target shooting or self-defense. Target shooting licenses permit ownership of a gun, provided it is securely stored in an approved and protected firing range, and is not taken out of the firing range without special permission. Self-defense permits are rarely granted, unless one can justify an imminent threat to life that cannot be reasonably removed. There is no restriction on types of small arms one may own.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.